Bolivia's movement towards socialism held an electoral campaign activity as it approaches the October 18th general election. Despite US pressure, Cuba, Russia and China have been elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council. The United Nations has stressed that countries must combine their COVID-19 recovery plans with urgent climate action. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. This Tuesday, Bolivia's movement towards socialism held electoral campaign activities as it approaches the October 18th general election. Representatives of the movement held a rally in the central city of Cochabamba to conclude the electoral campaign activities in the region. Thousands of citizens attended the event where several organizations, including 28 branches of the Tropics of Cochabamba Workers' Federation, expressed their support for the M.A.S presidential and vice presidential candidates and their program ahead of Sunday's vote. Meanwhile, the Organization of American States has officially announced its participation as an electoral observer to Bolivia's general election, following an agreement with the Supreme Electoral Tribunal. The O.A.S delegation will include 30 officials to be deployed in those departments they consider relevant. Meanwhile, former Costa Rican Foreign Minister Manuel González was appointed chair of the observation mission. The O.A.S played a major role in promoting the coup against President Evo Morales following the elections of 2019 by issuing a report that claimed widespread electoral fraud was committed. The Venezuelan government has announced the creation of an international centre based on the recently approved anti-blockade law in order to promote and protect large-scale investments in the country. Addressing the diplomatic corps via video conference, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez commented on the centre's functions, which will include an observatory on coercive and unilateral measures, so the country is aware of every illegal sanction imposed by the US government. Likewise, the centre will defend and promote Venezuelan products and cultural identity. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza highlighted the objectives of the anti-blockade law, which enables mechanisms to address the consequences of the economic attacks of the United States government.
In the last 5 years, a whole framework of arbitrary illegal measures have been designed from the United States, which have undoubtedly hindered the development of the Venezuelan economy, its international trade and investments in Venezuela, and we, the Venezuelan state, the Bolivarian government, President Maduro, are obliged to need to design our own legal framework in order to successfully address this situation.
Ecuador's Progressive Union for Hope coalition is holding a rally this Tuesday in front of the Electoral Dispute Settlement Court to demand the right to freely participate in the presidential elections scheduled for February 2021. Through the mobilization on the streets, the political organization is calling on citizens to defend democracy and the hope and future of the country. The rally is supported by different social movements and organizations, as well as international figures. The mobilization comes at a time when the Electoral Dispute Settlement Court must decide on a case that seeks to prevent the participation of candidates of the Citizens' Revolution movement, which forms part of the coalition, in next year's vote. The systematic extermination of signatories of the peace accords and social leaders continues in Colombia. 2 violent events were reported on Monday. The first was the assassination of former guerrilla fighter Plutarco Cardoso in the southern Guaviare department. His body was found at his home, and the evidence suggests that Cardoso was shot to death. According to the FARC party, 232 former combatants have been killed since the signing of the peace agreements in 2016. The other incident took place in a department of Cauca, where former indigenous governor Guaitio Zambrano and his wife were killed in Suarez municipality. According to the Association of Indigenous Councils, armed men gunned the couple down as they arrived at their residence. The Chamber of Deputies of Uruguay approved the 5-year budget bill, which will now pass to the Chamber of Senators for its final approval. Our correspondent Mateo Grill brings us more details from Montevideo.
After being approved in the Budget Commission, the Chamber of Deputies of Uruguay passed the budget bill that will be enforced for the next 5 years. The bill was approved by 57 votes of the 98 lawmakers in attendance. Now the Parliament will have this week to vote article by article. The government justified the new budget by saying that the population voted for change.
This bill brings an economic and philosophical model that Uruguayans chose when they opted to change the government. And that's something we have to keep in mind. And not only do we have to keep in mind the coalition deputies, but also the opposition deputies. Because what we are doing, we are facing a new change, a philosophical change that the people chose.
According to the government, the budget reflects an adjustment of the economy that is inevitable, but the main public policies will be maintained. For the opposition, on the other hand, the adjustment will be based on current workers' wages, what benefits the large economic groups.
Here it is said that the belt is being tightened to Uruguay, and actually that is not the case. The belt is being tightened for the immense majority of Uruguayans, but the belt is being loosened for the big economic groups that are going to have exemptions from the wealth tax, from the IRAE exemptions for the rich. Let's say meanwhile all the burden is put on the workers, for which there is planned losses in wages.
Some analysts say that the bill presented by the government is economistic and ignores social issues.
For me, it is market-oriented economy that does not respect the nature that must have a budget that is fundamentally social. I believe that it doesn't know the social purpose, prioritizes the economic, and in function of achieving those economic purposes, the population as a whole is punished.
Once all the articles are approved, the bill will go to the Chambers of Senators, which will have 45 days for its final vote.
Mateo Grille, TeleSUR, Montevideo, Uruguay.
The Reparations Commission of the Caribbean Community has called on former colonial powers to establish an investment development fund as a starting point to begin development projects in the region. According to the newspaper Barbados Today, the CARICOM Reparations Committee wants $50 billion as money for the fund, donated by entities that profited from slavery and apologize for their role, to begin the Caribbean growth process and to be managed both regionally and globally. The initial money from this fund is not intended to be passed on to individuals, but go towards capital outlay for much-needed productive projects across the Caribbean and to pop up social progress. Those who are being asked to contribute to the fund range from organisations that have publicly admitted to using gains from slavery for the start-up of their operations that remain profitable today, to persons who stacked up individual wealth which they admitted was founded in the enslavement of Africans in the Caribbean.
The results of the discourse.
And we invite you to watch our next broadcast of From the South at 20:30 in Caracas, Havana and Port of Spain, during which our correspondent in Bolivia, Camila Escalante, will bring us an exclusive interview with presidential candidate for the movement towards socialism, Luis Arce, who according to all polls is set to win the upcoming general elections on October 18th. Cuba has been elected as a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council this Tuesday. Among the new members of the Council set to serve for a period of 3 years are Russia, China, Uzbekistan, Mexico, Gabon and Pakistan. Based on equitable geographical distribution, the Council is made up of 47 member states, which are elected by the majority of members of the UN General Assembly through a direct and secret ballot. Cuban Minister of Foreign Affairs Bruno Rodriguez stressed that Cuba's candidacy was approved by 170 votes, which represents 88% of UN member states, while also noting that the country is signatory of 44 of 61 international human rights treaties. The General Assembly takes into account the candidate states' contribution to the promotion and protection of human rights, as well as their voluntary pledges and commitments in this regard. This year's election renewed 15 positions of the Council. The Mexican government has signed agreements with 3 pharmaceutical companies for the acquisition of a COVID-19 vaccine. The agreement, valued at over $1.6 billion, will allow the Mexican government to acquire more than 100 million doses of a vaccine as of December this year. The executive assured that the vaccine will be made available to all citizens as a universal right. Authorities pointed out that the country has access to 18 vaccine projects that are being developed in different parts of the world, and that with this initiative they seek to guarantee the protection of the Mexican population from the COVID-19 pandemic. And also in Mexico, trade unions and citizen organizations are demanding the government initiate a process to renationalize the electricity sector and a change in the constitution which allows for privatization. Our correspondent Eduardo Martinez has the story.
The energy reform approved in December 2013 must be modified to rescue the electrical industry and to reduce the high cost imposed on users, especially during the governments led by Felipe Calderón and Enrique Peña Nieto. This was the demand of different citizens' associations Outside the Federal Electricity Commission, they demanded the current government to reduce the participation of private companies, which currently control 60% of electricity generated in the country.
We have been resisting for 10 years. We have not received a solution to our demands, which are a regularization, adjustment of tariffs, which is fair, a clean slate, the renationalization of the electrical industry.
In this context, and 11 years after the extinction by presidential decree of the state-owned Luz y Fuerza del Centro, the Mexican Electrical Workers Union mobilized to remember that 14,000 of the more than 40,000 workers who were fired are ready to get back to the jobs taken from them by Calderon's administration.
There is confidence in us because we have been waiting for a change in this country for many years. The conditions are there is better dialogue, and we bring a proposal that is technically viable with the qualified labor, engineers, technicians, and workers that are here.
Electrical workers also support stronger national companies, such as national oil company Pemex, in order to guarantee energy sovereignty.
Eduardo Martínez, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
On Tuesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry condemned reported U.S. plans for arms sales to Taiwan.
U.S. arms sales to Taiwan seriously violate the One China principle and the three U.S.-China joint communiques, especially the August 17, 1982 joint communique, seriously interfere with China's internal affairs and seriously harm China's sovereignty and security interests. China strongly opposes this. China urges the U.S. to fully recognize the serious harm of arms sales to Taiwan, strictly abide by the One China principle and the three U.S.-China joint communiques, immediately cancel all planned arms sales to Taiwan, and stop arms sales and military ties with Taiwan. China will make a necessary and appropriate response in light of how the situation develops.
Regional authorities in Madrid called on Spain's central government to lift the local state of emergency imposed to tackle a surge in new COVID-19 cases. The measures include restrictions on movement for residents of the capital and 9 nearby towns, as well as an 11 p.m. closing time for bars and restaurants.
Today, we are once again asking the Spanish government to cancel the state of alarm in the Madrid region. Our health measures are succeeding in reducing the figures of infections, hospitalizations and hospitals care every day, as the experts of the regional health ministry inform us. Every day more companies are closed and more jobs are lost. In Madrid, we're not going to give up.
The criteria they set for the application of the state of emergency have now fallen. Unless they are changed arbitrarily, the state of emergency is an exceptional instrument and is a means of taking action. Therefore, let's discuss the measures in that case, but leave the state of emergency.
Authorities in the Netherlands have announced a partial lockdown in order to curb a sharp increase in new COVID-19 cases among all age groups and in all regions of the country. According to the National Institute for Public Health, almost 44,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19 in the past week, representing an increase of 60% over the previous week.
It's a hard message, and the new rules are going to hurt, but it's the only way because the facts don't lie. We have to be stricter on ourselves and stricter on our behavior. In any case, not enough people in Netherlands are sticking to the rules, and there are too many people who discard the rules. You can't blame a specific group because there are also many people who do not stick to the rules. But all in all, there are too many people who didn't stick to the rules.
The German and Greek foreign ministers have called on Turkish authorities to cease their provocations in the eastern Mediterranean, following the announcement on Monday regarding the redeployment of a Turkish research ship in disputed waters.
That is why we are extremely appalled that through renewed provocations, especially when the Uruguays set sail, this discussion process, these direct negotiations, which we still consider to be the right way to solve the problems, has become more difficult. And we want to keep what we have tried to do in the last weeks and months, literally to create space for direct talks on the agenda of the UN Council. But for this, we need an atmosphere that is characterized by trust and reliability. And due to the development of the last days, this cannot be attested at the moment. I want to be clear. Turkey's behaviors proves that they say one thing and do the other. They insist they want dialogue, but with their actions undermine dialogue.
Polish farmers took to the streets in the capital Warsaw on Tuesday to protest an animal welfare bill that would ban the breeding of animals for fur, exports of halal and kosher meat, as well as the use of animals for entertainment and in circuses. Critics of the bill claim that it threatens the livelihoods of farmers and a large sector of Poland's exports.
There is a risk of an economic catastrophe that will begin with a disaster in Polish agriculture, and agriculture is very much linked to sectors of the Polish economy that are developing very intensively, precisely because of agriculture. There will be no more chickens, no more cattle. Who will eat our Polish cereals? The price of cereals will fall. The circle is closing. There will be a huge drop in income of farming families because much of the meat goes to the halal and kosher markets. All consumers will pay the price because the price of all meat will increase.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has stressed that countries must combine their COVID-19 recovery and stimulus plans with urgent climate action. The UN chief noted that this means investing in green and decent jobs, rather than bailing out polluting industries, while also calling for an end to fossil fuel subsidies and stressing the need to take climate risks into account in all decisions. Since the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, the UN chief has called not to lose sight of climate change and its consequences and to promote more action on this issue. Guterres urged states to ensure that all national, regional and multilateral development banks agree to align their policies, portfolios and projects with the goals of the Paris Agreement by the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference to be held in Glasgow, Scotland.
We are moving in a very dangerous direction.
The World Meteorological Organization reported on Tuesday that there have been more natural disasters over the last half-century, but fewer deaths caused by them. According to the WMO, more than 11,000 disasters have been attributed to weather, climate and incidents like tsunamis that are related to water over the last 50 years, causing 2 million deaths and economic losses of $3.6 trillion. In the wake of heat waves, global warming, forest fires, storms, droughts, a rising number of hurricanes and the fallout from them, the WMO warned that the number of people who need international humanitarian aid could rise by 50% by 2030, compared to the 108 million who needed it worldwide in 2018.
No individual country is self-reliant and self-contained when it comes to these types of systems and services. They all rely on this global grid of observations, on global models, on regional models, and then finally the provision of services that takes place at the country level. So it's very important that that entire system be resourced.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vowed on Tuesday to support the landowners who were affected by recent wildfires that killed 3 people in the western region of Latakia and displaced thousands.
We are facing a challenge, and it is to restart production in those lands and keep the people in that region. And this will be through technical support, such as providing plantation seeds and alternative cultivation in the coming years. There are people who are profiting from this and trying to take advantage of the people's needs to buy those lands and use them in real estate.
Thousands marched in Indonesia's capital on Tuesday, demanding that the government revoke a new law they say will cripple labour rights. The job creation law approved by Parliament last week is expected to substantially change Indonesia's labour system and natural resources management. According to President Joko Widodo's administration, the new law aims to improve bureaucratic efficiency as part of efforts to attract more foreign investment to the country. However, demonstrators stress the law will hurt workers by reducing severance pay, removing restrictions on manual labour by foreign workers, and converting monthly salaries to hourly wages. Clashes broke out in the afternoon when riot police used tear gas to try to disperse protesters. A wildfire continues to rage on Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro, posing a serious threat to the flora and fauna surrounding Africa's highest mountain peak. The fast-spreading bushfire, believed to be fueled by soaring temperatures and high winds, erupted near Rona Camp, a stopover used by tourists and hikers. According to the Tanzania National Parks Authority, the roaring flames have destroyed a large part of the mountain forest. The authority's senior assistant commissioner said that firefighters, emergency responders and volunteers from the College of African Wildlife Management have joined forces with local residents to battle the blaze. So far, no casualties have been reported. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.